No, I'm not muted now. I'm just doing this live today because of how bad Foodie did on her story time the other night with her McDonald's. I will go over the McDonald's mukbang as well. I will also get the pen and paper out to write up this story so as I can give it my own take on it. But for now, I wanted to just upload or just use an upload. Oh God. Uh, to show people what the actual story was and how gruesome it is. I do know a lot of the details that in this storyline, um, like how they used the sister at Christmas Eve for their murdering acts, and yeah, Paul was at it first. He was at it, and nobody knew about it. But then when when the girlfriend slash wife started to find out about it, hi Shmeda, how are you? Um, when the wife slash girlfriend found out that he was killing, she wanted to become involved in it too. So hi Jen. Um, just giving a bit of background, Jen and Shmeda. Foodie tried to tell this story while she was eating her McDonald's the other night, and it's been triggering me since because she just didn't get it right. So I just want to give some details and a live that I've watched to make sure that it's okay. Um, as you know, I do know something about this case, like um, just an overview. I do need to find out the dates and the names of the murdered ladies and such, and how long they got in jail, or just little things like that. And I will do an upload of my own. But I'm going to watch this one for now. Canadian couple Paul Bernardo and Carla Homolka hold on. Appear to be love's young dream. Hold on. I have playback on Mad. But they were far from a match made in heaven. The level of evil and with both the I want to give full credit for this to Our Life YouTube channel that I'm getting this off. So that's that there, and that's where I'm getting the video from, and full credit to that channel. I know. I was shocked too, but not. But she was telling the story about the young lad in the Bahamas last week as well, that just graduated from high school and went on a holiday to the Bahamas with friends and jumped into the water that he didn't know was shark infested. So, oh my God, the way she told that story too was just atrocious. Right, I'm going back to the start. Canadian couple Paul Bernardo and Carla Homolka appeared to be love's young dream. It was like, the Barbie and Ken couple. They seemed like the ideal relationship. But they were far from a match made in heaven. The level of evilness. Of course, there's a background of I can't remember the word, of all people, I can't remember the word. But they're so alike and they look so alike that people actually hypothesized, is that the word? Wondering if they were actually twins that were separated at birth, to see if would they have the same traits as they got older. It is really creepy how alike they look. It is creepy, especially Well, he was a few years older than her, so they couldn't have been twins. For that's one thing. Um, I don't know. I don't think they were related at all, but it's just weird happenstance that it worked out this way. Um, I got my new iPad, girls. So, no game playing things coming up at the top of it like the tablet that was doing my head in. It looked like I was playing games and not actually doing any of this business. But anyway, on we go.
With both these people is so extreme. These people were animals.
What drove this seemingly clean-cut couple to their appalling crimes?
There was Karla Homolka raping, torturing right alongside her husband, and she seemed to be enjoying it.
Were Bernardo and Homolka born to kill?
It is interesting to know if they actually were born together or from the same eggs, or if their minds did work in tangent like that, or if they were just strangers that met up.
On the 29th of June, 1991, a discovery at Lake Gibson in Ontario would horrify the nation. It would be a sickening chapter in a story that had begun 2 weeks.
Sorry, I have to say it while I'm here. About Canada. I am hoping and praying that everyone in Canada, with the fires, the forest fires, and then the smog coming down into the US, I hope everyone is safe. There aren't many casualties. I'm sure there will be some, but please God, there won't be that many. And I pray that everyone is safe. And they'll be okay. Um, I don't know what else to say. It's a sad tragedy what's happening with the forest fires, and please God they'll be fine.
Earlier, with the disappearance of a 14-year-old schoolgirl.
Leslie Mahaffey was a typical teenage girl, beautiful girl in every respect. Went to school, came from a good family, had good values, and was sweet and kind and generous. A really, great kid who had her whole life in front of her.
On the 15th of June, Leslie had gone out with friends.
She was living at home with her mother and stepfather in Burlington, in a very nice middle-class neighborhood, and had been told that if you're out with your friends and you miss your curfew, you'll be locked out of the house. A little bit of tough love going on.
Leslie Mahaffey, a friend had died, and all the very popular friend at the school, and so everybody was sort of mourning the death, and she got home a little late.
The door was locked. She realized that she had forgotten her key. On all other occasions where she has forgotten her key, fortunately rare, she would ring the doorbell, knock on the door. Mom and Dad would answer the door, and she'd have to account for, missing her curfew. For reasons that are rather inexplicable, she chose not to do that. Shortly thereafter, it became very clear that something was terribly wrong.
A search began for the missing schoolgirl, but her disappearance baffled detectives.
When Leslie Mahaffey disappeared from her home in Burlington, the news absolutely shocked. Not just, obviously, those living in the neighborhood, but Canadians in general.
14 days later, a canoeist on nearby Lake Gibson would discover the appalling answer to Leslie's whereabouts. But for one young couple, the 29th of June would be a far different experience. That very day, Paul Bernardo and Carla Homolka were having a fairy tale wedding.
Carla Homolka had always thought of herself as a princess. She loved Disney characters and she wanted to be a Disney princess, and she planned a wedding that certainly on its surface looked like something you could witness in Disneyland.
21-year-old Carla's Prince Charming was Paul Bernardo. 5 years her senior,
They have such
but
dark,
hopefully eager
deep
for a fantasy wedding.
There was a rented coach,
eyes.
the old-fashioned
They're like
There was
dead
fancy
eyes, the
tinted
two of
glass.
them.
There was a ball gown of a wedding dress that had the puffy princess sleeves.
To onlookers, it was the dream marriage of a dream couple. You know, it was like, you know, the Barbie and Ken couple. They were, it seemed like the ideal relationship. But the true story of Paul Bernardo and Carla Homolka was
It's
no
weird how
fairy
they
tale.
have the same nose,
Both harbored
smile.
deep, dark
Oh.
secrets that once revealed would send shockwaves through civilized society.
Carla Homolka's childhood has always been presented to us as more than average, average plus. She grew up in a small town. She had a mother and father whose marriage stayed intact.
Dad made a living primarily going to flea markets and selling lamps. Mom was some sort of administrative assistant at the hospital in St. Catharines. They had 3 daughters.
They were well liked in the community. The Homolka family, it was like they had a swimming pool, so it was a gathering place for everybody. So she wasn't like, you know, an only child or someone who didn't have a family. So she had a solid background.
She was the oldest girl, blonde, blue-eyed, pretty, vivacious. Spent a lot of time as a child playing Barbie dolls, but wasn't at all shy or weak.
She was naturally bright, but not diligent when it came to her studies. So she was very typical of young girls from small towns.
But it appears pretty young Carla may not have been all sweetness and light.
As Carla grew up and I guess became the rambunctious teenager that many of us did, she went from being the very popular blonde, always had a date, or at least a couple of guys who wished they had a date with her, to a darker phase.
At times, Carla's behavior struck friends as odd. Some of her friends called her bizarre because she was into the Ouija stuff and a little bit of the occult, and she seemed fascinated with death.
She wore black. She began to play in the area of, you know, the psychicness, the seances, the dark side.
Hi, Cement Shoes. How are you?
Magical side.
One of her friends said that her pet had died, and Carla was determined to go to the backyard and dig up this body of this animal that they buried in the backyard. She had to see it. And finally they did it. Her friend didn't want to do it, but finally they did it. She just had this fascination with a dead pet. The teenaged Homolka would go on to work at a local vet's, and it was whilst at a hotel attending a pet store conference in Toronto that she met the man of her dreams.
When she met Paul, it was like lust at first sight.
I'm good.
Taking coffee in the hotel lounge, 17-year-old
Just
Carla was approached
doing
by
this for
23-year-old
today.
accountant Paul Bernardo.
Video of the Ken and Barbie
It would be an
killers.
instant and ultimately fatal attraction.
It was a chance
I don't normally go over into the true crime, even though
Carla Homolka wanted. She was part of
I'm
a high
from
school
the true
club
crime
that
community, but it doesn't usually, I don't usually get into it.
married to someone wealthy, someone slightly older, and getting a big diamond engagement ring. So this was already her mindset.
She could have had other guys, so she wasn't desperate, but she wanted him for some reason. I think something in the two of them just felt right. It resonated.
She was only 17. She was rather young. And Bernardo provided something for her that she was lacking. He came across as a strong individual, in control, and she became obsessed with him.
But there was far more to the ambitious young accountant than met the eye. And together, Paul Bernardo and Carla Homolka would become a deadly combination.
It's so creepy. It just reminds me of all the cases that came out of England, like Fred and Rose West, and couples who marry and then go on to kill, or couples who started killing and then went on to marry each other. It's a part of the crime community that I find fascinating. Is it nature, nurture? Where did it start? Were they both born into this, or was one born into this and kind of encourage, is that the word, the other to become a killer? Possibly because, well, if your wife knows that you're murdering these people, there's any chance that they could go, oh, sorry, I was talking to the ceiling there, I didn't notice I moved away from sorry. You, if your wife knows that you've been murdering people, there's always the chance that she'll get a moral side to her and possibly go and report you. So is it easier to take her in under your wing, or vice versa, because women can be the perpetrators in the first place? It's always something that's fascinated me, really. Which comes first, chicken or the egg kind of thing.
In June 1991, while police searched for missing 14-year-old schoolgirl Leslie Mahaffey, Paul Bernardo and Carla Homolka were enjoying a lavish, picture-perfect wedding.
She looked beautiful men's shoes. She looked so cute.
In the Toronto district of Scarborough.
Just like her mommy.
The year they met, the city would be rocked by an unprecedented series of violent rapes.
I really probably shouldn't have these words on this.
Brutal that I'd ever seen in my career at that time, and I served for 31 years on the Toronto Police Service.
The mystery attacker would become known as the Scarborough Rapist. There never was before, never was since such a string of
You're welcome.
Of attacks like that.
You're a little cootie patootie.
For a very long time.
The terror would begin in 1987.
It was in the late spring, and we had
Do you know,
two sexual assaults.
Foodle said she's the most beautiful person. She's more beautiful than 90% of people on YouTube. Well, I say our group, the Ward, is far more beautiful than 90% of the YouTube. Far more beautiful. We are absolutely toast balls.
Very close to one another. Both victims were attacked on their own property.
He attacked them from behind, and they never really got a look at him at all.
He threatened the victims that he would do harm to them if they made any noise.
He scared them, like they were, literally afraid for their lives. If they screamed, he would kill them.
So although they're attacked on their own property with family inside, they weren't able to call for help.
The 2 assaults that spring were just the beginning. Over the next 3 years, the
Yeah,
Scarborough rapist would strike again
we are
and
more
again,
beautiful on the inside,
targeting lone
and it
women
does.
and teenagers
It is more
and
important there.
paralyzing the community. Several women were taking buses home at late at night, and you were car
And we have
following.
empathy. A lot of people don't have empathy.
On the bus. Police flooded the area and created a dedicated task force, but the elusive rapist continued to strike.
They couldn't figure out where he was going to attack next. Everybody was on guard, and yet the rapes continued.
May to December 1987, 6 attacks. Some of the police officers, when their shifts were over, they were still cruising the area trying to find this guy, and they just couldn't get him. April and May 1988, 3 attacks.
As he continued, he escalated in his violence.
Actually,
And
now that I have you three in chatting to me, there is a question I wanted to ask people. It has me over a loop. I don't normally get not frazzled, but kind of what the hell is going on here, kind of more than anything. But there is a case over here in England, with a famous TV presenter, and it has me wrapped up in it for the last couple of weeks. Mainly because when I was a child and I was sick at home, I would turn on BBC, CBBC, Children's Broadcasting, blah blah blah. The BBC for children in the mornings, and this man would have been there with his gopher, Gordon the gopher, and his case is getting really, really interesting and strange. So I wonder if you want me to cover that from, like, it's only a 2 week old case, so I could go back and watch news clippings and stuff from 2 weeks ago, because this man, all right, he came out as gay 2020 21, I want to say. That didn't bother me. That was like, whatever, you know, you do you, boo, whatever. Um, it did bother his wife and children, of course. His daughters are in their 20s now. But now, what he was trying to hide and cover up from what was about to come out by saying that he was gay on his television show, it's actually gone deep, deeper, 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 and there's going to be a big rabbit hole, and I'm interested in it. I'm not sure if you girls and cement shoes, if you're interested in finding out about it, but I would like to cover it. So just let me know if yes, cover it. Oh, okay. Yeah, for sure. I will watch. Aw, Shmita, thank you so much. You're such a sweetheart. Yeah, his name is Philip Schofield, and he started in CBBC, as I said, the children's BBC shows in the morning, and then he went on to do other shows, and he's in the last couple of years he's been on this morning uh kind of morning show for moms, kind of gentle pop culture, fashion, makeup, cooking, that sort of thing. And he was presenting that with a girl, a lady girl, a lady. She's not a girl; she's in her 40s. Called Holly Willoughby, and Holly Willoughby's husband is one of the chief executives of the show. Um, so she's pretending she didn't know, because she's kept on her part of This Morning because the husband is producer of it. Um, but now this, I think it's, oh God, I think it's hitting the third young boy he has groomed. He's yeah, he's roomed. I think the third boy came out yesterday. No, they're not boys now, but the first boy, Matthew McGreevy. Jeez, I won't have to tell you anything. Matthew McGreevy was in Two Faced Theatre Company, which Philip Schofield was patron of, and he met Matthew when he was 10. But he's saying that they only started talking when Matthew was 15. However, there are some Snapchats were found, but mostly they talk through Instagram. And Matthew's first Instagram post saying hi to Philip Schofield was when Matthew was 12. But some people say he was 10 when he met. It's an awful story. No, I haven't heard about the feature man. No. Yeah, but Jen, it seems it started when he was 10. When he met him in the school when he was 10, he started rooming him from then. Bringing him out for lunch under the guise of giving him tips and tricks on how to get into into TV. He didn't want TV. He originally wanted to do singing and acting. He's amazing. Apparently, he's an amazing singer and a very talented actor. So he didn't want to be part of TV at all. But Philip got him a part on the manager. Because there's a lot of people like our Philip. Yeah, I'll start that tomorrow. Yeah, tomorrow's Monday. I'll start that tomorrow. God, it's gone off again. No, we'll go on.
Some of the violence towards these victims was unspeakable.
October to December 1988. 4 attacks.
He would do awful things like gather up stones and sticks and insert them into the woman who had just been raped.
Ouch.
June 89 to May 1990.
Pure sadist.
5 more attacks.
He took some of their belongings with them, which left them feeling more unsafe than they were in the first place.
In a couple of cases, the women were just getting the courage to get up. He would reemerge, throw them to the ground, and attack them all over again.
The damage that it did to those victims was unreal.
Law enforcement knew it was only a matter of time before the unthinkable happened.
When the FBI profilers actually were called in, they did say, if you don't get this guy, you can see from the way he's escalating, he will turn to murder. So there's no doubt that the fact that he wasn't getting arrested made him bolder.
All the while, the Scarborough rapist was terrorizing the city. Carla Homolka was being wooed and captivated by her new beau, Paul Bernardo, a seemingly impressive and charming young man with good prospects.
Oh, the old doucheman shoes.
And eventually found his way into the
Hollywood is a cesspit.
And worked for an accounting firm.
You look at him and you think that this guy is a professional, very, very confident, outgoing fellow who was very self-assured, didn't have any kind of doubts about his own ability.
Paul Bernardo was everything Carla Homolka had ever dreamed of, both as a child and as a teenager. He was older, tall, blonde. He was handsome. She called him
His professor.
Prince. and he had a car and he had a job. He ticked all her boxes.
I bet he did.
But Homolka's Mr. Perfect was not all he seemed. Paul Bernardo was born in 1964, a Scarborough native.
He was troubled, it seems, from the very beginning.
His father's a voyeur, he's a peeping Tom. He seemed to be sexually inappropriate in a lot of ways.
Creepy.
His
That's what
parents
I'd say.
sleeping in separate rooms.
Creepy from being a child.
It was just a very unsettled life that he had at home. Despite the family turmoil, on the surface, the young Bernardo seemed well adjusted, joining the Boy Scouts and later becoming a summer camp counselor. He was fairly athletic. He was a lifeguard when he was younger. He also took karate lessons, and very good looking, and he could get any girl he wanted, and he wasn't shy on ego at all. When Bernardo was 16 years old, his mother dropped a bombshell. The man he believed to be his biological father was not. Paul Bernardo had been the result of an extramarital affair.
When Bernardo found out that he was,
And that's where all the speculation comes in. Like, was it an egg donor? Why did they look so alike? Why were they so in tune with each other? Why did they become like soulmates so quickly? And this is where it comes in, like the fact that the parent isn't actually the parent that they always knew. Well, they knew through their lives. Not lives. That's like they've had 9 lives like a cat. No, through their life.
a result of an extramarital relationship, he became rather angry, became angry at his mother. She had referred to him as a bastard child. And I know that they had scrimming matches. There's no question about that at all. It wasn't a great family relationship.
I don't think he identified with his stepfather very much. I think he really hated him.
But there was one unhealthy interest the young Paul Bernardo had in common with his stepfather.
He was caught several times as a peeping Tom, trying to peer into the neighbors' windows. Parents often forbid their children from playing with him.
As he grew older, Bernardo's sexual needs became increasingly sordid. He began to humiliate and beat girlfriends and engage in sadistic sex.
All
Most
these words
rejected
are
him.
going great on my algorithm, I'd
That
say.
is, until he met Carla.
Carl's family life was pretty normal. There wasn't that much to say about it, but when she did meet Paul, she pretty quickly got into some of the deviance that the sexual deviance. She would write letters to him, saying, "Do what you want to me. I'll do anything and everything." So she
Yeah,
resonated to
his
deviance
eyes are just
very fast,
empty.
which has
So
to
are
tell you
hers.
this wasn't just suddenly she changed. I'd have to say that there was already something there in her that he saw and triggered that she was quite ready for somebody like him.
In 1990, after 3 years of terror for the city of Toronto, police got a break in their search for the Scarborough rapist. For each of his 17 known assaults, he'd been careful to make sure his victims were unable to describe him. But in May,
17 known
the elusive
assaults.
rapist let his guard down.
He was brazen enough at that particular point to attack the female from the front. This was the first glimpse that we had, which helped us create a composite drawing to help us identify this particular individual.
After the composite picture was distributed, police received a tip-off that the image bore a striking resemblance to a 25-year-old local accountant, Paul Bernardo. Detective John Munro called Bernardo to the police station for questioning.
I'll never forget this as long as I live. He'd come into our office late in the afternoon. He was neat, clean. He wore a shirt and a tie. His hair was cut. He was very calm, cool, and collected. He looked like the all-Canadian boy. And I talked to him about different things, about any problems he'd had with women. He said he never had any. Did he have a girlfriend now? And he said, I do. My girlfriend's Carla Homolka. Of course, in November of 1990, the name Carla Homolka didn't mean anything to us.
Because
Sorry. Do you know, I actually, with that story about the guy that just graduated high school, they were saying that sharks actually don't attack humans. It's literally not the sort of meat that they go for. Um, what attracts them to boats and stuff, and whoever goes overboard or falls, slips, pushed, whatever. This poor young lad, he jumped in. On he had a few drinks, jumped in. He was celebrating his graduation. It was very sad. But they follow the boats because it's the boats and the people on the boat that feed them fish, and so they're attracted to the boats to eat the fish. And if they see something floundering around in the water, they actually think it's a fish. Don't know how true that is, but it's actually quite interesting. It puts a different spin on what I was always told that if you're in sharky water, I suppose it's the movie Shark, I suppose, but if you're in shark infested water, the shark will go for a human. But no, they think the human is a fish, so they go after it. Yeah, we sound like fish. Oh, excuse me, have a hiccup.
he had this sweet boy look, this cherubic look.
I'm sounding very educational
Charm,
today. It's
gregarious.
Education
He was
Sunday.
able, as any good psychopath can, to cover and charm people and make them believe that he's innocent.
Bernardo was one of 700 persons of interest that the task force were looking into. They'd already collected DNA samples from over 100 suspects.
I asked Bernardo to provide samples of his hair and saliva and blood, gave them up right away. By doing this is my opinion, he was trying to deflect any suspicion on himself by being so cooperative.
Testing of the samples would eventually prove Bernardo was indeed the Scarborough rapist. But tragically, not soon enough.
Now, at that time, DNA was in its infant stages in terms of being a forensic investigative tool. So the police took the sample and it sat for 2 years on a shelf.
2 years.
By 1990, Bernardo was spending lots of time with the Homolka family. But although he was now engaged to his willing girlfriend, Carla, Bernardo was not satisfied.
Paul had this thing for virgins, and Carla had boyfriends before Paul, and he liked women who had, never had sex. They were virgins.
Oh yeah, it's
It was
Jaws, not Shark. Oh god, sorry.
For him, Carla's 15-year-old sister would provide the answer.
Carla and Tammy looked like twins, except for the age difference.
To Tammy,
Yeah.
he was like, the big boyfriend. She sort of looked up to him, sort of idolized him, I guess. And with him, of course, all his thoughts were, sex. I want to have sex with her.
Paul Bernardo began pressuring Carla into arranging for him to take the virginity of her baby sister. And the most bizarre thing, and still impossible to comprehend, is that Carla did that.
6 months before their planned wedding, Carla Homolka decided to gift her younger sister's virginity to her boyfriend for Christmas.
Why didn't she back
Carla was
out?
afraid that Tammy would tell.
Carla stole anesthetic from the vet's clinic where she worked.
Totally
The idea was
complicit.
to put Tammy under and then have a sexual assault her. And that way they could have their threesome.
On the 29th of December 1990, with Carla's parents still in the house, they put their plan into action.
The family was all gathered, and everybody went to bed except the three of them. They had Tammy drinking, got her drunk, and as she passed out, they basically raped her
Oh God.
in every possible way.
The unconscious 15-year-old began to turn blue.
Tammy vomited and suffocated.
They turned her upside down because Homolka knew that from when she worked in the veterinary's office, but she actually died.
They quickly thought of a cover story, they called emergency, thought of a cover story, and that was accepted.
It was all passed off as an accidental death, which it wasn't, of course. Tammy was a gift that, to this day, to even
She was a sacrifice.
because how do you, so I'm a parent that's sorry. How could somebody set up her own sister? Like, how does somebody do that? Tammy Homolka's unexpected death would not signal the end of Paul and Carla's deviant games. It would merely be the beginning of a sickening new chapter.
And more sickening it does get. Oh God.
For Christmas of 1990, Carla Homolka had promised to gift her sister's virginity to her fiancé, Paul Bernardo. But as they drugged and raped 15-year-old Tammy, she choked to death. And while the Homolka family grieved the loss of the young schoolgirl, Carla and Paul continued preparations for their dream June wedding.
They feigned a lot of remorse. Both Paul and Carla wept, Paul especially, about Tammy's death. But within a very short period of time, Carla was pressuring her parents to go ahead with the wedding.
I don't
And
know.
she wrote to a friend how angry she was that her parents were taking so long, months, to get over Tammy's death because she wanted all of the attention back on her for her wedding.
Oh yeah. Barbie has to have all the attention.
Bernardo and Homolka's lavish
It's
wedding day
disgusting.
went ahead as planned on the 29th of June 1991. But unbeknown to onlookers, as the happy couple smiled and posed for photographers, they were hiding another dark secret. They held the answer to the riddle of missing teenager Leslie Mahaffey. "14-year-old Leslie had mysteriously disappeared from outside her home 2 weeks earlier. On nearby Lake Gibson, a canoeist was about to discover her whereabouts. What he found would stun the nation.
It wasn't just a question of shock, it was a question of horror.
The water level was dropping down in Gibson Lake.
A fisherman found one, and then a passerby found another one.
Encased in cement, Leslie Mahaffey's dismembered body parts.
Some of the concrete wasn't solidified. It wasn't hardened, and it came apart, and one of the body parts drifted to the surface. And then they just dredged the lake, and they found out.
Buried her in cement. Could you even?
Leslie's remains were found sawn and encased in 8 concrete blocks. The people of Ontario now realized they had a maniac in their midst.
we're now dealing with someone who is demented in the extreme,
That's the truth, because
psychopath, a serial killer.
those two pair of
Because the Scarborough rapes had been going on, it just
unalivers
seemed
were
like
just
some new horror
not good looking,
that the crime was escalating in this
especially
small,
Rose West.
quiet, perfect little town.
Leslie's fate had been sealed 2 weeks earlier. Before their wedding, Carla and Paul had moved into a rented house in St. Catharines.
St. Catharines is just, small, kind of Ontario community, which is accepted as being a very safe community. And obviously it wasn't.
Paul Bernardo's twisted urges for young girls had not abated.
He talked to Carla about it'd be nice to bring somebody home and just I could have them at my leisure, for lack of a better expression. He wanted to be able to have somebody where he wasn't attacking them outside and running. He wanted to have them as a slave in his house.
What sort of mind thinks like that?
Leslie Mahaffey, who paid the price for Bernardo's sick fantasies. On the night of the 15th of June, the schoolgirl had returned home late without her door key.
Unbeknownst to her, Paul Bernardo was on the prowl. He seemed like a normal person. Like all psychopaths, they have a charm to them, and they're remarkably successful in their manipulation. And he started up a conversation with her, and that resulted in her abduction and taken to the home in St. Catharines.
When he brought Leslie home, it was weird. Carla was sleeping at the time, and she got up, and he said, "Or here's this woman I found. I think he put a hood over her head or something."
Woman I
Carla
found.
Molka became enraged, apparently not because there was a young woman that he planned to rape in the house, but because Paul had shared their wedding glasses, the crystal flutes that you drink champagne out of, and was sharing them with Leslie Mahaffey.
Over the next 36
When you bring
hours,
home puppies
Paul
and
Bernardo
kittens, you
assaulted
don't
his
bring
victim
home
repeatedly,
people.
constantly instructing her to say specific degrading phrases.
Bernardo engaged in scripting of his victims. He told his victims what to say. Tell me how great I am. Tell me I'm the king, and so on. He is sexually aroused by degrading and humiliating his victims in a very extreme way.
Apparently, he had a difficult time, even with the rapes, keeping an erection. And the scripting helped because it was about humiliating these girls, saying things like, your boyfriend's not as good as I am, and much more vulgar things, which I won't repeat. But he wanted to degrade them as much as he possibly could, and also elevate himself, make them say to him, what an amazing person he was.
After he'd had his way with her, Leslie's young life was taken.
I thought he was going to.
And then took the body in the basement, and Carla's parents came over for a Sunday dinner, and
Oh, that's why they had to get rid of her. Because I thought he was going to bring somebody home so as they could be his slave over time.
Into this cellar area, getting food with the body lying right there.
The next day, Bernardo set up a plastic tent in the basement and plugged in a power saw.
He went and hacked up the body, and he bought lots of bags of concrete from one of the local stores there, and encased each body part in concrete, and just threw them into driving over a little bridge, and just threw them in.
Despite public horror and a high-profile police investigation, Bernardo and Homolka didn't stop.
After Leslie was held, tortured, killed, and then decapitated, they went looking for another young victim.
And this time, the husband and wife would go hunting together.
Kristen
No.
French was
That's a line that
remarkable,
can't be crossed
beautiful young
back
girl.
over.
Comes from a great, great family, was involved in school sports, had a tremendous sense of humor. She had her whole life in front of her.
She was a very, very careful young woman. After Leslie's death, she was always telling other students, like, don't talk to strangers. If you see a stranger, blah, 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 don't stay away. She was always very careful.
On the 16th of April 1992, Bernardo and Homolka would commit their most brazen crime yet.
Absolutely sickening, cement
Kristen
shoes.
is walking back from school in the afternoon, broad daylight.
She was walking home down a very quiet residential street. She was in front of a church.
They're so cheeky now, though, going out in daylight. Like, how they got away with it for so long, I'll never know.
Carla Homolka, who was an attractive young woman.
Carla was out with a map, pretending she was lost.
That was the trap.
And Kristen, who's very careful, sees this young woman seemingly need help, so she went over to help her.
As Kristen leaned over the map, Carla grabbed her. Paul came from around, grabbed her, pushed her into the car, bent to the back seat, and they zoomed off to that same death house.
They kept her for 3 days, approximately, and videotaped it.
Oh, there is for anyone who wants to watch more,
You know,
there's
just the brutality
let's see.
was gruesome.
There is links to the missing videotapes. Not that I think anyone might want to watch them, but they are there.
And they do it because they want to manufacture their own pornography, where he's really the star actor.
During her ordeal, Kristen saw an opportunity to escape her tormentor.
Paul went out for food during the 3 days of captivity. He went out for food, and Kristen was quite bright. She said she wanted food from the farthest outlet in St. Catherine, so she knew Paul would be gone for a half hour. So basically, Carla was alone with Kristen French for like a half hour, and Kristen was pleading with her, and Carla wouldn't let her go. She knew that they had to kill her. She knew that this poor girl was going to be dead in a matter of days or whatever. And she had just picked up the phone and dialed 911. It would have saved her life. She didn't do it.
After 3 days of degrading and brutal sexual assault, Bernardo strangled Kristen. Together, he and Carla bathed and scrubbed the body, cut off all her hair, and dumped her beside a country lane.
It shows how
Kristen French's naked,
sneaky and
body was discovered in a ditch in Burlington.
just slithery, slimy that she was, that she could get away with it. Just like a lot of women in different
All was no
cases.
longer well for the once happily married couple. After the murder of Kristen French, Paul and Carla's relationship would begin to break down.
He started going downhill. He started living in this delusional world, and he started getting abusive with Carla. And he beat her up, and she basically left him.
The assault would spell the beginning of the end.
Yeah, I believe that too, Jen.
It wasn't until Carla Homolka went screaming to police about the fact that she'd been beaten up by Paul Bernardo that the case began to crack.
While Homolka pressed charges against her husband for assault, the DNA samples that the Scarborough Rape Task Force had taken more than 2 years before finally surfaced.
The long-awaited DNA results came back from the Scarborough rapes, and Bernardo was a match. And so they went to Carla, and she said, yeah, he confessed to me about the Scarborough rapes, and he was arrested after that.
When the officers went to speak with him, he was no longer the quiet, unnervous sort of individual. He just said, I'm not telling you guys jack.
Homolka, however, did talk. She admitted involvement in Bernardo's killings of Leslie Mahaffey and Kristen French and the death of her sister Tammy, but claimed that she'd been a battered wife and an unwilling accomplice. With little evidence against Bernardo for the murders, prosecutors felt they needed a witness to convict him.
The only way to put Paul Bernardo in prison was to believe Karla Homolka's story.
Homolka was offered a deal: testify against her husband and receive a total of just 12 years in prison. But before the trial began, a discovery was made that would show the self-proclaimed battered wife in a whole new light.
I always thought that
an entire nation.
a wife can't testify against her husband.
In 1993, Karla Homolka had admitted involvement in the killings of schoolgirls Leslie Mahaffey, Kristen French, and her own sister Tammy. She'd claimed to be a battered wife and the unwilling accomplice of her husband Paul Bernardo. But before the trial of Bernardo began, a discovery was made that showed Karla in a whole new light. Hidden in the bathroom ceiling of the couple's St. Catherine's home was a collection of shocking home video cassettes.
The mini cassette tapes actually had writing on them, Karla's hand. Things like Kristen, Leslie, Paul, and me, with hearts and flowers, like little stickers.
Sicko.
What we all discovered is that there was Karla Homolka raping, torturing these young girls right alongside her husband, Paul, and she seemed to be enjoying it.
Oh, so there is that they can if they
It turned out that
choose.
the victims' families, Tim Danson, would be required to view the grim home movies.
It was a pretty awful thing to be part of, in the sense to see that level of pain and anguish and despair at unspeakable levels. It is not something that any human being should ever endure, and I'm talking about Kristen French and Leslie Mahaffey. I mean, it's that disturbing.
The collection also included footage of Bernardo and Homolka raping Karla's unconscious younger sister, as
So
well as a
sad
sex tape recorded shortly after her sister's death,
and
with
disgusting.
Karla mimicking Tammy.
Within 3 weeks, we have Karla dressing in Tammy's clothing, trying to entice Paul without any remorse at all.
The public would speculate that Bernardo, as the Scarborough rapist, had not killed before he met Homolka, and question if she had been the motivating force for murder. What was certain, however, was that together Bernardo and Homolka were a deadly duo. But were they born killers, or had their upbringings made them monsters?
Nature versus nurture is a puzzling question in the case of Paul Bernardo and Karla Homolka. Karla Homolka apparently had a really nice suburban childhood. Oldest of 3 children, pretty popular, had a little bit of the dark teenage years, but nothing unusual. And then becomes, if not the driving force behind sexual torture and murder, certainly a partner in crime, to despicable crimes, planned crimes. Paul Bernardo, on the other hand, has been described as probably mentally unwell from his early childhood. Now, of course, psychopathy can develop from a bad childhood, and we know that Bernardo was not treated well, that he was told at a very susceptible period that he was illegitimate.
I very strongly believe it's upbringing, that you have a troubled home life, and then it leads to certain feelings. And then he happened to meet somebody who facilitated those feelings. If he had met a woman who was horrified, you want to rape my sister, like if he, and by just some fluke he happened to meet this woman who just facilitated everything. She just went along with his twisted sexual fantasies.
He used Homolka for his own needs, and Homolka fed off Bernardo to satisfy her own needs. It was a symbiotic relationship. How these things develop is probably a combination of internal and environmental factors. But in my judgment, and the judgment of most people who have studied this in a serious way, that there's a significant neurobiological component to this, whether it's hormonal, genetic, electrical, chemical, exacerbated by a head injury, and plus psychosocial factors. And a lot of things have to go wrong, which makes these crimes extraordinary.
So even if Bernardo and Homolka had never met, might each of them have been destined to become murderers?
There were people who said, well, if Carla had never met Paul, she would have never been a killer. I'm not sure that that's true. She probably wouldn't have been a killer, but she would have been a calculating, manipulative person. There's no doubt about that. Very narcissistic, very self-centered. So certainly, had another killer crossed her path, she wouldn't have hesitated to do whatever it took to be part of that person's life. Paul, I think, would have become a killer no matter what. The fact that he had a wife who allowed him to bring the victims home, just made it easier. But if he hadn't, he still would have killed.
Ultimately, the deal Carla made with the prosecution would stand. She would serve just 12 years for her part in the crimes, whilst Paul Bernardo will spend the rest of his life behind bars. One half of this deadly duo now walks the streets free.
One thing that was clear when you look at these videotapes is that the level of evilness and the level of psychopathy.
Sorry, guys, my hand is shaking. I'll change over to the other hand.
There is no ounce of being human. These people were animals.
That's it. Yeah. Oh. So that is it. So yeah, that was for educational purposes only. And if we Holly there, I will get on to doing some stuff about Philip Schofield and Holly Willoughby, and there's a lot out there, so I have to search through what I can find. I do know GB News, Great Britain News, have interviews with different celebs that would, well, they're celebs, like talk show hosts, and I think they're celebs. But anyway, there are some interviews with other talk show hosts that would have come across Holly and Phil and felt they weren't liked, and they were treated pretty badly, disrespectful. And I'll do that from tomorrow. Of course, I will stick with the Foodles. Foodles is always entertaining. Oh no, she's not actually. Sometimes she's quite boring, but she always has some sort of entertaining bit of crap in there where she's talking. So yeah, I will. I'll stick with Foodles. I'll go on to Philip Schofield, and when Foodles tells her horror stories during the mukbangs, I will come and debunk them, because she literally just gets like 5 minutes of whatever she needs to talk about, and that's it. Like, she just literally said about the Ken and Barbie killers, and that they killed the sister, and they were from Canada. Very little information. So I just thought I gotta give the people the information they need. So thanks for watching Foodles. Yeah. Oodles and oodles of Foodles. Yeah, we will talk soon. Thank you guys for coming on. Cement Shoes, Jen Lou, and Shmeda. I love you all, and I will get back to you soon. And I have to try now and find out how I can go out and put for educational purposes on my about section or on my description. Yeah, I'll do that. Thanks for coming on, and I will talk to you all soon. I have 5 foodles to do. I will catch up. I will catch up. So, toodaloo, and chat to you soon. Bye.